pack your bags for an 8-day trip, end up spending 9 months away. Yeah, that happened. To astronauts.
9 months in space, can you imagine? Talk about a mission gone long. Astronauts, Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore, they know what that's like now.
They sure do. It was supposed to be this quick test flight for Boeing Starliner back in June
A
2024.
little test run.
8 days, in and out, simple, right?
Right.
Except they didn't get back to Earth until last week, March 2025.
Wow. That's quite the delay.
Yeah, a 9-month delay makes you really appreciate how unpredictable space travel can be. It's not like calling a cab if something goes wrong.
Nope, not at all. And get this, they didn't even come back on the Starliner.
That's what we're diving into today. We're going to look at this whole extended mission, what went wrong, how these astronauts dealt with it, and what NASA did. We've got this detailed analysis we're going to unpack for you.
Should be fascinating.
Totally. And what we learned from this, it's not just about one mission, it tells us a lot about the future of space exploration in general. What do you think was the point of this original mission?
Well, the plan was an 8-day test flight for Boeing's CST-100 Starliner.
CST-100 Starliner.
Yeah, this is a big deal for NASA's Commercial Crew Program.
Right, the Commercial Crew Program. For listeners who might not know, this is NASA teaming up with private companies.
Exactly, working together.
To build spacecraft that can take astronauts to and from the ISS, the International Space Station. It's not just NASA doing everything anymore.
Sharing the load. Much more efficient that way.
So this flight, Williams and Wilmore on the Starliner, launched June 5th, 2024. They wanted to prove the Starliner was ready for regular astronaut flights.
Ready for prime time.
But instead of 8 days, it turned into 9 months. 9 months. They didn't get back till March 18th, 2025, and not even on the Starliner. They hitched a ride back on a SpaceX Crew Dragon.
Yeah, that shows you how much this mission went off the rails. You've got to be prepared for anything in space, and NASA, they're smart, they planned for that. Having that SpaceX option available, that was huge.
So let's get specific. What exactly went wrong with the Starliner that caused this massive delay?
So there were a few big technical malfunctions that stopped the Starliner from coming home on time. A major one was helium leaks.
Helium leaks in the spacecraft.
In the propulsion system. Not good.
I bet. Why were those such a problem?
Helium is what pressurizes the propellant tanks, and it makes those thrusters work. Thrusters are how the spacecraft moves around in orbit, and super important when you're trying to land back on Earth.
So the leaks meant they couldn't steer or land properly.
It was a risk, yeah. The leaks could have gotten worse over time, and then they might not have enough helium to control the Starliner during re-entry.
Re-entry, that's when the spacecraft comes back through the atmosphere.
Exactly. And it gets super hot. You need those thrusters working perfectly to hit the right angle, to slow down enough, to land safely.
Sounds intense.
If the thrusters are messed up because of the helium, well, that puts the astronauts in danger. It's not just we're a little off course kind of problem.
Right, it's life or death. The report mentions other thruster problems too, not just the helium.
Yeah, during some tests and when they tried to dock with the ISS, some thrusters just acted weird, not firing right or not consistently.
Unreliable.
And that on top of the leaks.
Yeah.
It all added up to this spacecraft is not safe to come home in.
So NASA and Boeing had a real dilemma. They've got their astronauts up there, but the ride home is broken. And a rescue mission that was considered too risky and expensive.
Yeah, imagine trying to scramble another spacecraft together quickly for a rescue. It's like, oh no, we need another spaceship. Stat. That's a ton of pressure, which leads to mistakes. Plus, docking two spacecraft together, that's always a delicate dance.
I can see how that would be a nightmare.
It was decided that the safest thing to do was to keep them on the ISS, let them join the regular crew rotation, and figure out a better way to get them back. Which is how they ended up on that SpaceX Crew Dragon.
Okay, so now you've got 2 extra people on the ISS for who knows how long. What was that like for NASA down here on Earth?
Chaos, I imagine. The ISS, it runs on a tight schedule. They plan out the resources so carefully. Food, water, oxygen, everything. Now suddenly they've got 2 extra mouths to feed, literally.
Had to make those supplies last a lot longer.
Yeah, for months. And it's not like you could just order takeout up there. Hey, space pizza delivery. No, they had to make it work with what they had. Plus, the science experiments, the astronaut schedules, all that had to be adjusted.
And then there's the health of the astronauts. Being up in space for that long takes a toll on the body.
Absolutely.
Oh.
NASA had to watch them like hawks. Microgravity, it's cool and all, but the longer you're up there, the more your body starts to change. Muscles get weaker, bones get thinner, fluids shift around.
Don't they exercise like crazy on the ISS?
Oh yeah, 2 hours every day. But it's still not the same as being on Earth. And then there's radiation, space radiation. You're more exposed to it up there, and that has long-term risks.
So they really had to adapt their medical plans for these two.
Big time. They adjusted their workouts, kept a close eye on all the physiological changes. They were trying to prevent any lasting damage from all that extra time in space.
Meanwhile, they had to figure out how to actually bring them home. With the Starliner out of commission, planning that must have been quite the task.
It was a huge undertaking. NASA looked at all the options, and they decided the best bet was to use SpaceX's Crew Dragon. That's when having those multiple ways to get to and from space really paid off.
Redundancy is key, especially when you're dealing with human lives.
Absolutely. It took a ton of coordination between NASA and SpaceX, making sure the Crew Dragon was ready, scheduling everything, then getting those astronauts safely transferred from the ISS.
So let's shift perspective. While all this is happening on the ground, what are Sunita and Butch going through up on the ISS? They must have had moments where they thought, are we ever getting back?
I can only imagine. They're up there knowing their ride home is broken, no idea when they'll see their families again. That's got to mess with your head.
Beyond the physical challenges, the mental ones must have been huge, too.
Huge. The stress, the anxiety, not knowing when or how you're getting back. And even though they're with other astronauts, the ISS is still pretty isolated. They're far from home, far from everyone they know. It's not like they can just hop on a video call whenever they want. NASA does what they can to help, but still, it's tough.
Makes you realize what these astronauts sacrifice, the mental strength it takes.
Yeah, being an astronaut is not for the faint of heart, that's for sure.
Well, finally, after all that waiting, they did come home on March 18th, 2025, aboard that Crew Dragon. What a relief that must have been.
You bet. Back to Earth, safe and sound. The Crew Dragon splashed down in the Gulf of Mexico, and NASA and SpaceX were right there to meet them. Both astronauts were in good condition, which says a lot about them, and about all the work NASA did to take care of them.
Amazing, truly. But after 9 months in space, getting used to Earth again can't be easy.
Not easy at all. Gravity, it's a real shock to the system after that long up there. Your inner ear, the part that helps you balance, gets all confused. You get dizzy, nauseous, you can barely walk straight. It's like being a baby deer, all wobbly.
Baby deer, that's a great way to describe it.
Right, and your blood pressure's all over the place, you get lightheaded, could even faint. It takes a lot of rehab to get back to normal. Muscle strength, bone density, all that needs work. And NASA, they'll be keeping an eye on them for years, making sure that extra radiation didn't do any lasting harm.
So we've learned a lot about the limits of the human body and about how resilient it is thanks to this mission. What about the big picture, though? What does all this mean for space exploration going forward?
This whole situation, it's given us some valuable lessons. First off, Boeing, they got to step up their game. Those technical problems with the Starliner, those are serious. They need to do more testing, more checks, more everything to make sure that spacecraft is safe for humans.
It's a reminder that even the biggest companies can make mistakes.
Absolutely. And when it comes to space travel, mistakes can be deadly. So having backup plans, that's crucial. Having multiple ways to get to and from space, like that Crew Dragon, that saved the day here.
NASA's strategy of having those multiple options really paid off.
100%. And the other big takeaway, this unplanned 9-month mission, it's given us so much data about how humans handle long-duration spaceflight. What happens to the body, what happens to the mind. That's crucial information for future missions, especially if we're talking about going to Mars.
Mars is a whole other level of difficulty.
For sure. A trip to Mars, that's years in space, not months. We need to know how to keep those astronauts healthy, physically and mentally.
So this wasn't the mission they planned, but it turned into a valuable experiment.
It really did. It pushed the astronauts, it pushed the technology, and it taught us a lot. We're going to use that knowledge to make space travel safer, smarter, and more successful in the future.
We've covered a lot today. This story of Sunita Williams and Barry Wilmore, it's fascinating. It's a space exploration about human resilience, about dealing with the unexpected. And it makes you think, what are the biggest challenges left to solve if we want to go even further, to Mars and beyond? What new technology do we need? How do we prepare astronauts for those really long missions?
Those are the questions we're grappling with right now, the questions that are going to shape the future of space travel. This mission may have been unplanned, but it's brought us closer to answering them.
This has been an incredible deep dive. We've learned so much. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Until next time, keep looking up.